So, what does this mean for ordinary Americans? It means nobody will own anything. So, let's go up. Let's start with this Twitter thread. This is from Cultural Husbandry. Interesting name. I can't see that. It's too small on my screen. It's at APN something. Oh, you can see it. You can. Yeah, what is it?
A philosophy. APHILOSOPHAE. Thread.
Right, so,
you want me to read it?
No, I have it all in my notes. So, BlackRock is buying every single family house. They call out BlackRock in particular in this thread. So BlackRock is buying every single family home they can find, paying 20 to 50% above asking price and outbidding normal home buyers. Why are corporations, pension funds, and property investment groups buying? What are they buying? They're buying entire neighborhoods out from under the middle class. Let's take a look. Homes are popping up on MLS and going under a contract within a few hours. BlackRock, among others, are buying up thousands of new homes in new neighborhoods. So who is BlackRock? Only the world's largest asset manager and leading proponent of the Great Reset. They're looking to redistribute, get this, $120 trillion, the entire wealth of the world's middle class and poor combined several times over. All right, so let's take a pause there. Nash, your thoughts on those opening remarks?
It has to be, the important thing to note here is that for it to be a big issue, it has to happen on a massive scale. If they do it to one small town, it will be probably bad there, yes. But also, if it's just one town, it doesn't really have that much threat of spreading. An important thing to note, though, I think, with the prices, people will probably just be like, oh, what about the person selling their house? Clearly, that's helping them. Sort of. Because you have to think about this. Their house, if it gets bought for 20 to 50%, which is huge, above asking price.
Huge.
What does that really mean? Because for a corporate entity like what is it, BlackRock. For a corporate entity like BlackRock, because they're buying so many of those houses around that price, that is minuscule to them. But for the individual homeowner, if your house gets bought at that price, well, that means that you can really only buy a house that's the exact same as the one you bought, unless you completely move out of town and you have to move well far away from where you just were.
Well, here's the thing, Nash, and this is something I cover a lot for my day job, the housing market, where people aren't selling their homes right now because they can't afford to buy a new one.
Exactly.
Or they can't find a new one to buy in time to sell the house. So they're stuck. They're stuck. Even if they want to sell and take advantage of this opportunity, they're stuck because they can't go anywhere.
No, this exact same scenario has happened to my sister, who's been trying to buy a house for a few months now. And every time she puts an offer, somebody comes back and has given an offer that's well above the asking price of the house. It's happened to every single one she's tried to get. And she wants to buy a house.
Yeah.
It's like
and even if you get a house, a friend of the show, Joe Malandrino, just bought a house, and she's having trouble getting furniture. She's been in there for almost a month now, maybe a little over a month, and her furniture just started coming today because of the worker shortage. Her and her husband these days can't get new furniture.
That's crazy. And
so the house
shortages are going to come into play a lot later. I know that.
Yeah. So let's continue on with this thread. Single family rentals. Now, your potential lower to middle class homeowner is positioned to be a permanent renter. This matters because the lower and middle class owning a home is the most major part of any financial success in future upward mobility. This is wealth redistribution, and it ain't rich people's wealth who's getting redistributed. It's normal American middle class, salt of the earth wealth heading into the hands of the world's most powerful entities and individuals to a traditional financial vehicle gone forever. Now, I think I think this person is 100% on the money. It's well known that the main way to gain generational wealth means not just your wealth for you, wealth for your kids and your kids' kids and so on and so on, is to own a home, is to own land, is to own property. Like my grandmother owned three houses, three houses. And when she died, her estate, my mom and her sister became rather wealthy, enough to retire. That's not going to exist anymore with this this is projected or predicted not to exist anymore with this going on. Nash, what do you think?
No, that's totally true. But I would make one adjustment where they said it's the traditional financial vehicle gone forever. Um, it's actually a much more archaic financial vehicle, which is essentially creates like a fiefdom where you've got people that a lot of people work for. Now they own the homes, and now you might be renting where you live and working for that company. That's essentially what like sharecropping was. That's very dangerous, and so I don't think that it's necessarily the traditional gone forever. It's going back to a much more brutal period of financing, which
Like
is
feudalism?
worse. Yes, it's going back to feudalism essentially.
Oh God, that doesn't sound good.
Well, no, and this is exactly how it worked, and it's also important to remember that's sort of how, like, if you're going to talk about like reparations for Black people in America, this is like the biggest and best argument going for it is the fact how African Americans, once they were given land, it was taken from them. Either forcibly or financially, they were weaseled out of it. And so they didn't have that generational wealth. We got redlining too that allowed them to prop themselves up for years to come. So they had to do sharecropping. They had
Mm-hmm.
to do renting. They couldn't own it because powers that be wouldn't let them.
Right.
So it's reminiscent of things like that, which I think everybody can agree is a pretty horrific situation to be in, no matter who you are. That's
No,
kind of
but
the point
Nash,
of capitalism is to get rid of those systems.
that's my next. That's before we move on. I do want to ask that question. Isn't this free market capitalism?
Sort of, yes,
But
yes.
are they also creating a monopoly? Or is
Mm.
it not a monopoly because it's not a monopoly because it's not one company doing it or one institution? It's a handful of 200 that we saw in that research.
Well, here's the thing: it isn't free market capitalism if they are abusing the systems at B, um, i.e., the government systems, to get an extra leg on people without that finance. That is not free market capitalism. It probably would be monopolistic. It's hard. It's probably closer to some sort of oligarchy type system because it's 100% an oligarchy if this is in coordination with the government.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides are talking to each other to have this be a plan. That's 100% an
Yeah.
oligarchy.
Yeah.
But it probably dances on the line of some type of monopolistic behavior if you're just abusing the system like that. Because that's important that we don't have a totally free market capitalism. And I'm sure everybody's sort of aware of that. For those you aren't, because we have regulations in place that protect people and human rights that we've all agreed to. So, if you're abusing those laws to go against the exact reason they were put in place, then yeah, there's probably something altogether different. I wouldn't know how to say it off the tip of my off the top of my head, but oligarchy is probably the closest.
All right, so let's continue on with this thread. Thank you much.
That was a
That was
lot. Sorry.
no, no, no. That was perfect. Make sure you cut that. So where does this position the average American in 30 years when it's a given that every new neighborhood is to be bought up bought up whole so they can be utilized as SFRs, which I believe is SFR is like something for rent, sale for rent. I believe it's what it's
Yeah.
called. It positions them as peasants. Being poor can be temporary condition bettered by upward mobility. In the US and other nations, home ownership is often the first and most vital step. This can provide for generational wealth and success, but as permanent guaranteed renters, you're pissing away a lifelong equity and a chance for mobility. You just become a peasant. Home equity is the main financial element that middle class families use to build wealth, and BlackRock, a Federal Reserve funded financial institute, oh my God, it's funded by the Fed, is buying up all the houses to make sure that young families can't build wealth. That's right. The Federal Reserve funded financial institute. Let that sink in for a minute. Got it? They're using your tax dollars to, oh my God. I forgot I put this in here. They're using tax dollars to fuck over the lower middle class, and it's permanent. Not one president administration of bullshit. This is a fundamental reorganization of society.
All right. So yeah, everything I just said is sort of everything I just said is sort of put there in its own terms, especially the fact that they recognize that this is creating peasantry, because that's essentially how it existed, where a peasant is somebody that doesn't own land, but they would work for the lord because only lords can own land.
Right.
Then they're exactly right. That's exactly the system they're creating. And yeah, you're closer to an oligarchy if the government is helping this happen, because you're essentially having the wealthy and powerful control the laws to their own
But the
benefits,
Fed,
and
the Fed, the Fed isn't a government organization, though.